Hey everybody, welcome to Etc. Live. Happy Sunday. I'm your host Kelly Barrett. Beyond excited tonight for my guest. He has so many things, but I'm going to narrow it down to a few for the sake of time purposes. He's the founder of one of Canada's greatest bands, the Pumps and Orphan. He plays with Harlequin. He is CEO at CBG Artist Development, singer, bassist, songwriter, producer, and I'm probably forgetting a few things. Chris Burke-Gaffney. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you. We were just kind of jarring a little bit here before the show, and you wrote a little bit of a song about being on the show. you just hummed a few bars on, and you got your mandolin there.
Well, the truth is that Kelly said, "Hey, I got to go to the bathroom," so I was bored, and I picked up my mando and said, "So happy to be on the show." That was pretty much it.
I think there was another line. We'll work on it.
Okay, I'll write your theme song.
There, I would love that. You can write the etc. Like, I need a theme song, don't I? I don't have a theme song.
Yes, you do.
We're going to have to talk about that. Yeah. Well, Chris, we were just talking about this, and I'm going to kick things off with a huge shout out to my official show sponsors of Etc. Live, Writers and Rockers Coffee Company. And you are kind of an anomaly of a guest, Chris, because you are the first guest I've ever had on the show who has not one but two coffee blends out. So you and Harlequin has the Sweet Things in Life.
Yeah.
And you also, the Pumps and Orphan, also have, ta-da, drum roll.
Coffee with the Queen.
Coffee with the Queen. Yes, you're the only guest ever to be on the show that has two blends with Writers and Rockers. So.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So are you a coffee connoisseur?
No, not at all. But I do drink coffee, and I love coffee. I drink a couple of cups a day, but I wouldn't say I'm an aficionado in any way. Not like my pal Brent Fitz, who's always talking about the best coffee, whatever.
I think Brent probably drinks the Damn It Tooks. I think he probably drinks Todd Kern's blend. I'm assuming.
No, I don't think so. I think.
Sorry, Todd.
No, as a matter of fact, no. He told me that. He's got some high end. He's a coffee aficionado.
Gotcha.
So he's pretty picky, and he knows what the good stuff is, and he drinks a lot of coffee, I guess. So, but I don't think it's the Todd Kern's blend. It's his favorite. I'll have to ask him. You'll have to get him on the show. He'd be a good guest.
He would be an excellent. Todd's been on. I would love to have Fitz on. Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? People are already popping into comments. So Del Panu is saying hi, Chris.
Hey, Del, the man.
Do you know Del? Yeah. And Doug Corby. Doug Corby's in the house.
Oh, great. Okay. I'm glad these guys are jumping on.
Adele Walding. Hey, Kelly. Hey, Chris. I've been so excited for this show. Me too, Adele. Me too. And speaking of the show, I was joking with Chris about this for the show. You may notice my backdrop is different than normal. So I get up today and I find that I've got no internet on show day, no less. A couple hours with the technicians at my provider and no internet. So, big shout out to my buddy who's lent me his house, and he's not even here. He's out of town working. So I figure after the show I'll dig through a few cupboards and drawers and no, I'm kidding. I won't do that.
Find his alcohol stash.
Yeah. But anyway, grateful I found a place to do the show, Chris. I would have done this interview at Tim Hortons. I would have set up shop and shushed everybody. Don't you know who I'm talking to? I got CBG on the line here to shush. So anyway, it all worked out.
You wouldn't be drinking any of the Tim Hortons coffee because then you'd be cheating on the Writers and Rockers.
Right? I'd be bringing my own blend into Tim's. Chris, I got to say, you got some really cool things on the go, and we're going to get to that. And you've had a really fascinating journey in this industry. And but let's take it back to the beginning for a minute with an interesting fact about you. But I'm gonna start off with a question that you and I have been laughing with all week. How in the world does a man with ADD manage to not have to get a day job for 50 years?
Right.
Let's start there.
That was kind of my joke when I was advertising the show. And first of all, I didn't want to diss anybody with a real job because I think real jobs are really important. And so avoiding a real job is not something I'm super proud of. I really respect everybody, especially the people who have been the frontline workers on during the pandemic. I look at the nurses and just people who have been overworked and overstressed and stuff like that. And I just feel so grateful to them. Um, but I guess one of the reasons that I've been able to, make a living in music is because I wasn't really good at anything else. So it was basically out of fear mostly that I just had to adapt and learn different things. And, when I got to, into my late 30s and had a couple of kids and, didn't want to go on the road anymore. Um, I always knew that I loved making music and I didn't want to quit making music and I didn't really know how to do anything else.
Right.
I started a recording studio. I was in a house band here in Winnipeg, and it was a really good gig because the people that hired us, they had two clubs, and one was a classic rock club, and the other one was a dance club down the street. And so it was me and TNT, who was the drummer from the Pumps, and Brent Diamond, who is the keyboard player from the Pumps, and a bass player named Blair DePape, and I played guitar, and we did a whole bunch of classic rock covers, and then we'd change our clothes and run down the street in the middle of winter with the shiny jackets on and play at this dance club, doing dance songs like Prince and Sister Sledge and stuff like that.
Fun.
But the reason I mention that is because the owners of the club had this big building on the second floor. They gave me space to build a studio. So that was kind of my first studio. And I started, learning how to record and stuff like that. And I was really lucky because there was a girl that used to come around, and we invited people to jump on stage with us all the time.
Fun.
And one of the people that jumped on stage was Chantal Kreviazuk, and she was like, Chris, you gotta help me. And so I started writing songs with her, and we made a bunch of demos, and we started shopping to some record companies, and all of a sudden every record company loved her, and there was a bidding war, and that kind of changed my life from being a musician producer to then she asked me to be her manager. And so I I realized that I wanted to be a songwriter and producer, and I felt like that's what I was good at. And in order to manage my own songs, I felt like if I because I wasn't going to be the one that was singing or playing these songs, I had to find other artists to sing and play my songs or co-write with them or something like that. And so
Right.
that was kind of my modus operandi. And I started my company, CBG Artist Development, developing artists and helping them get record deals and then managing them. And, before everything went digital and everything was streaming and there was no money, when record companies were still giving out record deals and spending a lot of money, it was a really lucrative endeavors because I had sort of 3 or 4 different revenue streams.
Right. And, speaking of Chantal Kreviazuk, you co-wrote her triple platinum selling album.
Yeah.
Under These Rocks and Stones. And so I'm wondering, Chris, when I was learning about that information, I was kind of curious, is part of the reason, maybe subconsciously or not, that your passion for, developing and fostering other artists to, to take them next level is possibly remnant of what, maybe could have or should have happened for you in the Pumps, or would have been nice had you had someone like yourself to just.
Yeah. I mean,
I wonder.
I do feel like at that time, I don't want to say anything negative about anybody at that time,
Right,
but
for sure.
I feel like if I knew back then what I know now in terms of how to manage a group and what to do and what not to do, I think we probably would have had a much better chance of success out outside Canada, in the States and stuff, because we did have, particularly with Orphan, we had, a pretty great record deal, American record deal.
Yeah.
But it was just, it was just handled wrong.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. And speaking of which, is it true that you recorded your first album in your 20s? You got your first record deal in your 20s?
Yeah.
And was that with Orphan?
No, that was the Pumps.
Or with the Pumps, I'm sorry. Wow.
Yeah.
And so you wrote Miracle when you were you were young when you wrote that song.
Yeah, I think I was 21 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there wasn't this, like with some artists, they're kind of out there for, pumping it out for years and years and years. And you got a record deal in your 20s. That's a little success, my friend, right there.
Yeah.
I think that's quite something. And so did you start really, really young? You had to. If you were writing a top 10 hit song when you were 21, you must have started really young.
Well, I mean, I started picking up a guitar. My sister won a guitar at a carnival draw, and I kind of picked it up and learned how to play, and tried to get some bands going and stuff like that, and played in a lot of 3 or 4 terrible bands, and yeah, I mean, we started the first version of the Pumps, which is the 3-piece band.
Right.
We were all like 20 or 21 or something like that, so, and it, I think we got a record deal about a year or 2 later. So, but we were writing songs. I probably wrote my first song when I was 15.
Wow.
I mean, it was terrible, and but
but still, you're getting your feet wet, right?
I think part of it was because I in the 80s, it seemed like all the singers had super high voices, like Robert Plant and all these guys. They're all way, and I couldn't sing like any of those guys, and I really wanted to. And so the only way that I could play live was to come up with my own songs if I was going to be the singer. So that was one of the motivations. And
so writing songs to suit your voice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, your voice, I was telling you this, shamelessly telling you this before the show, you got a melty voice, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
You really, really do. Miracle is one of those songs. I was listening to it this week, and I watched the documentary with a friend last night, just a little success, and that song still to this day is just timeless. It still just melts me all these years later.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that. And oddly, that song, there's some magic with that song. I've written a lot of songs, but there's something about that song. I couldn't put my finger on it, but people really connected with that song. When I first met Chantal, she was like, "You're the guy who sang Miracle." I mean, that was a song that, people knew. And oddly enough, the record company never even released it as a single. It's just radio stations just liked it and started playing it. And even to this day, just recently, I got a film company approached me, and they want to use it in a film. So it's it lives on.
Well, and it's not the first song that you've had in a show or a movie. Like you've had quite a few of your songs.
Yeah. I've been lucky enough to get a few songs, and I'd like to get more, but it's a tough thing, and a lot of artists these days are letting their songs be used for really low price, and so
it's kind of lowers the bar, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it just lowers the price and the demand. I mean, there's just so much music out there that it's film companies don't really have to, or television companies, if it's an unknown song, they a lot of times they don't give you anything, because people just go, at least I got my song in a film and I can talk about it.
They do it just for the notoriety, and they bring the bar down. Yeah. And so and you've had songs on Chicago Hope and Felicity and Malcolm in the Middle and Degrassi, Real World, and Providence. That's and so how does that happen? Are you approached? Are you approached by them? They hear your song and they track you down?
Well, most of the time it's when I was signed to a publishing company. Well, I've actually had a few publishing deals, but my first major publishing deal was with Chrysalis in Los Angeles, and that's their job, is to shop your songs to film and
Right.
television.
Oh, cool. And I'm just wondering, Chris, what was the writing process? What did it look like back in the? Was it a collaborative sort of effort, or were you the main songwriter?
Do you mean with my band?
With the Pumps, like early on with the
With
Pumps
the
and
Pumps,
Orphan.
we
Yeah.
first started out, and with the Pumps, we first started out, and we decided to share everything equally, no matter who. And a lot of times, we just got into a room and started jamming, and somebody come up with a riff, and it was my job to come up with the melodies and the vocals. And to tell you the truth, our first and a lot of times, I would just sing melodies, and I wouldn't really have lyrics because I was just, you know, it, I don't know. I used to listen to the Rolling Stones and Mick Jagger and a lot of bands, and I had no idea what the words. I couldn't even make out the words, you know. So I thought, oh, the words aren't even that important. So a lot of times we do Rolling Stone covers. I wouldn't even know, I know what the chorus is, but the verses I just nobody even noticed. And so
That's right.
when I was writing songs, I was doing the same thing. It was just like a bunch of nonsense. And then when we went to record the record, we had 2 or 3 songs that I didn't even have lyrics for, and I had to write the lyrics as the day before we were doing them. And that was kind of an eye opener to like really get your shit together and start
Yeah.
sure you got the lyrics together. And then with Orphan, I said to the guys, hey, listen, I'm spending hours at home trying to write songs, and you guys are playing Pac-Man or something like that. I don't want to share the royalties. I'll share the publishing royalties with you, but not
Right.
songwriter royalties. So at that point, we started whoever wrote the song, or if we collaborated, we'd split the song up that way. But the Pumps we split everything evenly, no matter what. Orphan, we did it more of a conventional way where the writers were the writers. And
Right. And so I'm just curious. Oh, you know who's in the house? Mike Dinger.
Mike Dinger, oh man, Dinger, yeah.
Dinger, sound tech extraordinaire. Yeah, he's saying, hi Chris, hi Kelly, I'll see you Friday. You're on the list. Awesome. Yeah, I'm on the guest list. So yes, I will see you on Friday, Mike. So that's Mike's talking about the Lee Aaron, Toronto, and Headpins in Calgary next week.
Right.
So looking forward to that. Lee Canfield, he's a great fan of the show. A good friend of mine says, hello, Kelly and Chris. Great show, great guest. Not dating myself, but 40 years ago, I saw the Pumps in Toronto and Street Art in an outdoor gig at Rundle Park. Great show, continued success, and keep on rocking. Thanks, Chris.
That's nice. Thank you.
John Helfrich, hey buddy, he's just saying hi, guys. Todd Cook has a nice comment here for you. He's saying, hello, Kelly, Chris. Looking forward to the show. I have been a fan for over 40 years and probably have seen the Pumps, Orphan, and Deadbeat Honeymooners over 100 shows. Chris is definitely the best singer Winnipeg has ever had. Thanks for all the great shows and memories.
Thank you, Todd.
Thanks, Todd. I would agree with him on that. Michael Pachalak says, howdy, guys. Hi, Michael. Gary Jones, fair to say musicians know early their passions. That's very true. I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah. Sweet. That's so nice.
Yeah, I knew there'd be a lot of people popping in. It's, the long-awaited show that should have happened a few weeks ago. And there's a question for you. What was it like recording in the studio?
Well, it was the first time in a real studio with the band, and we had these fairly famous producers from England, so it was super exciting for us. We thought, this is it. This is our big break. And that studio is, as for those of you who don't know, it's a very famous, not just Canadian, but world-class studio. David Bowie, John Lennon, all the Rush records. So yeah, it was really exciting, and I learned a lot. And one of the producers was a guy named Phil Chapman, and he taught me so much about recording. And he's one of the guys that inspired me to want to be a producer.
Is that right?
That was a life-changing moment for us.
Right. Yeah, I was watching the documentary again, like I said last night, and there was, the clip about the studio, and they were showing some of the, giants that have recorded there. And
Yeah.
I am a David Bowie fanatic, and so that had to just be. I mean, there had to be something just about the energy in that space that was just conducive to doing good work, I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It made you feel like you were in the big leagues, and that's that's energizing.
Right. In the I'm just curious before I forget, where was the inspiration for just a little for the song, just a little success? What?
Oh, well, that was one of those songs of the Pumps where I think Lou came up with. He just had the guitar riff, and to be honest with you, we were just writing songs, and there's an old Stone song that goes, "Well, I told you once and I told you twice."
Great tune.
I can't remember what song the name of the song was, but that was kind of the inspiration for "You Look Pretty Cool, You Look Pretty Nice." With that kind of melody, and I don't know the title. All I want a little success. I guess it's just I wanted to have sex with a lot of girls, and I wanted to get. I was 21.
Right, as you do when you're 21.
Yeah.
I love the candid.
Uh,
Yeah, Brent was mentioning last night too that and not to go down a rabbit hole here, but he was talking about how one of the record execs thought that possibly you should remove the brass part for that song, and I was kind of shaking my head watching that documentary because I thought that's the entire riff of the song.
mhm.
And so who came up with that little brass riff on the keyboards?
Brent did the keyboard.
Right, because that's like when I hear that song, like as soon as you hear that, you know what song it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
And,
a great part.
and do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite Pumps Orphan song that never gets old or that you still really enjoy?
Well, I guess my favorite Pump song is probably "Coffee with the Queen."
Yeah,
Um, and my favorite Orphan song. There's an Orphan song that nobody's ever heard. It's called "Crazy for the Night," and I really love the feel of that song. And I wish we would have released it as a single, and maybe if I could have written a little better lyrics, because I think the melody and the groove of the song I really love.
right. Well, maybe you still could. Who knows?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, you still could. So in the documentary you were mentioning, this is one of the questions I always like to ask. It gets mentioned that "Bust the TV" was one of the first songs to receive airplay, and maybe that wasn't your first song of yours you ever heard on the radio, or maybe it was. But where were you the first time you ever heard your song on the radio, and what was that like? What went through your mind?
I think we were in Winnipeg because we just released a record, and we're probably getting ready to go on tour. And I think we heard it in the car. I heard it in the car somewhere, and I just felt like I mean, back then, if you were on the radio, it was a big thing.
Right.
And you wouldn't even be able to get on the radio unless you had a record deal or something, like unless there was a lot of muscle behind your project. So yeah, I felt like, okay, this is it. This is we're on our way. We're gonna be as big as Led Zeppelin. That's what I was hoping. And
Right.
yeah, it was a great feeling, like just an incredible feeling of validation, and
For sure.
that you've made it. You're on the radio. You've made it, even though you've only got $8 in your bank account. You still feel like you've made it.
Well, and I would agree with you. It was a different world back then, and it's one of the questions I find interesting to discuss with my guests because, there is something to the way things used to be, and I don't mean to be the person from that generation that goes on and on about how good the good old day was, but the fact was, before technology exploded into the music industry, bands hit the road and they paid their dues and they honed their chops, and it was a huge privilege to get a record deal, and if you wanted to see a band you loved, you bought a ticket and you went to a concert, and it was this kind of mystical, magical event. And now it seems like with all the technology, it's literally allowing anyone and everyone to just pump music out like an assembly line. And regardless of talent or experience, and my question to you, in your opinion, Chris, do you think technology friend or foe?
Both. Yeah, it's both. It's kind of like if you look at Facebook, it has a lot of great, or Instagram or all the social media sites. Um, I made a Facebook page for my family where we can share photos of our, I've got a granddaughter now, and so we can all, you can get on Messenger and talk to somebody across the world. So there's a lot of great things about it, but at the same time, it can spread a lot of misinformation, which is really harming the planet and society. It's good and bad, and it's the same thing with the music industry. It's great that um, so many people, artists, have access to putting stuff out, but at the same time, like you said, there's just so much
Yeah.
music out there that it there's so much music, and everybody who's got a computer can make a record, and
Right.
so there's it lowers the value, I think,
I
because
agree.
um,
The mystique is gone, and the prestige of it almost. I don't know if I'm
yeah.
saying it correctly, but you get
Well,
what I'm saying. It's
I feel the same way. I mean, I don't want to sound like an old guy who doesn't like anything new, but it's harder for me to find new music that I really love because it's a lot of it is all programmed, and don't
right.
get me wrong, I program a lot of music and I love that too. And there's a lot of newer bands, 21 Pilots or Imagine Dragons that are freaking fantastic and do a lot of programming. Uh, but yeah, it's when you listen to the radio, you've got a bunch of artists, and it's like they're all produced by the same four guys.
Right.
All the songs are written by the same four guy producers. Um, I don't know if that's super healthy, but I guess if you're willing to dig around and look, you can find something that you like. So, I mean, I think the fact that you can go on Spotify and for $9 a month or whatever it is, listen to anything that you want. But at the same time, that's why I say it's both. At the same time, I remember going to get a lead, I loved Led Zeppelin or the Beatles or something like that. But the only time you could see them is if you picked up the record and then you
Right.
could see pictures of them. Now you can see pictures of people. You see more pictures of them than you even want to. So you're like the mystique is gone. You're right.
Right. And I mean, in defense of like some of the new artists coming up, we were discussing this before the show, Chris, that you and I were both fortunate enough to be back on the road, back in the back in the day. I don't want to sound like an old person here either, but back in the day when the bars were thriving and you could live indefinitely on the road and tour, and you played 6 nights in one bar. And a part of me does feel a little bit sad for the new generation, people that are trying to make a go of it in this business. There's no place to play anymore, and half the time they're not being paid and whatnot. I mean, how lucky do you feel to have been a part of that? To me, the 80s and 90s were just magical, and I'm so grateful I was born when I was, to be a part of that and to be able to go out and make a living. And who's to say what success is really, because I always thought I had a successful music career and I never even put an album out.
Yeah.
Because to me, to get up and go out and do what I love to do and get paid for it every day, not a lot maybe, but to me that was success, right? And so I guess it's all relative. But for the younger people starting out, what advice, if any, would you give them on how to navigate through this new world of, where there's not places to go and hone your chops and pay your dues and all that? What would you say?
Well, I work with a lot of young artists that
Great.
are coming out and produce a lot of young artists, and that's kind of what I do. So I have to give them advice all the time, and I've had to kind of learn some of it myself. I ended up putting out a record of an alter ego. Try just for it was partially I wanted to do it, but also partially because it was a social experiment about what it would be like for a new artist to put out a record.
Yeah.
I didn't tell anybody it was me or I was in the Pumps or Orphan, but I made up this guy named Bucky Cromwell and made a record and released it. And uh, just to try to learn that. And then and then just, talking to other people who are releasing records. And then recently, I've been working with a group, producing and managing a group called Indian City, who just were nominated for a Juno.
Oh, nice.
And I got them a record deal with Warner Records. And so I was able to see how Warner Records worked the social media. So I learned a lot about that. So I think the thing is, and I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, there's a part of me that it feels like it's kind of sad, is that new artists have to be social media experts.
Right.
You have to dig into TikTok and Twitter and Instagram, and you have to work that. You have to raise capital. You have to build content. You have to be savvy. Try to um, build content and create awareness online. That's really what you have to do until you get to a point where the people with capital or the gatekeepers, whether it be record companies or publishers or agents or whatever, you have to get, back in when I started out, a record company would go, holy shit, that guy's a good singer, or that's a good band, or those guys have good songs, I want to sign them.
Right.
Now it's like, how many, Spotify
followers or whatever. Is it followers?
Instagrams, how many streams do they have? How much YouTube stream? Like, and then, that's how they determine who they're going to sign. So,
and it has essentially become a real job now, like, with everything you were just describing, that they have to know this and be this, and it has kind of become a real job.
Yeah.
Whereas, as opposed to you got signed and you just went out and toured and.
Yeah. You have to be on social media, and you have to be good at it, and you have to spend a lot of time on it.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I'm just curious, if you could go back in time, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently? If you knew what you knew now at 18 years of age, what would you do?
I think I'd be a better songwriter, and I'd realize I feel like, oddly enough, unlike a hockey player, usually best when you're 21, 25 or something like that.
Right.
As a songwriter, usually best when you're 65, or you don't get any, you get better.
Right.
You don't get so I wish that I knew how to write songs then the way I do know, the way I know how, and how to produce records, and just know about the business. That would be it. That would be it. But I don't know. I feel really lucky. We had. I don't have any regrets or anything. We had a lot of fun. I think the fact that I had some success, a little bit of success with the Pumps and Orphan, opened up doors to, because then other artists knew who I was and they wanted to work me as a producer.
Yeah.
And then it turned out to be a manager. And, a lot of people our age know, if anybody knows about me, they know about me from the Pumps or Orphan or Harlequin or whatever. But people under 40 or under 30, like, I feel like I've accomplished a lot more and made a lot more money as a manager and producer than I have as an artist myself. I got Chantal Kreviazuk, was the biggest record deal in Canada at the time. I've gotten Kyle Riabko from Saskatoon, a $250,000 publishing deal. I got, I've had more record deals for people than certainly anybody in Manitoba. That's so I feel like I'm really lucky and I've accomplished a lot, regardless of what happened with the Pumps or Orphan.
Of course, and it's like it gets back to what I was saying earlier, Chris. It's all relative. I mean, that's success in coming out of different pore. It's like, and I would imagine that your experience, all your experience with the Pumps and Orphan led you to being this great producer and to having, and I think everything is as it's supposed to be. And in the documentary, former manager Sam Cates, he reflects on the band's journey, and he says that the Pumps had it all. He said they looked great, they sounded great, and they should have been superstars. They are superstars, is what he said. And all it takes is that one break, and for whatever reason, it didn't happen. And I'm sure, like, what are your thoughts when you hear something like that?
Well, the interesting story is we had two managers, Sam and another guy named Frank Whitebird, and they had a fight and didn't get along. And so we had to choose between one of the two.
Right, it's in the documentary.
And I think we made the wrong choice because Sam was more of a hustler, more of a go-getter, more of an ass kicker. It turns out he became the mayor of Winnipeg.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, yeah, and so I think that would have helped us to have a more a manager that had better business acumen.
Right, right. I think Sam had like definitely the best interests at heart, but maybe you know what I mean. Like his desire to get you there was there clearly from what I gleaned from the documentary. But and here's a weird question, but it popped into my head when I was watching the documentary. Do you think things would have been different if the Pumps had been an American-based band?
That's a good question. The Pumps didn't have an American deal. We had a Canadian deal only. If
Right,
we,
but I mean, if you were it, like if you guys were from the States and this was the band, you were born in the States. I
yeah,
always wondered that if there's an edge to being American, maybe probably
um,
not so much nowadays, but back then, what are your thoughts on that?
it's hard. It's really hard to tell, but I will say that, because the United States is 10 times the size of Canada,
Right,
that your record deals are usually 10 times the size, and what they can do is usually 10 times the size for as well. Um, there's a lot of companies that record companies that like back in the day you didn't want to, it was better to sign an American deal because the American, if you were signed to a Canadian company, the American, like if you're signed to, like, example, Warner in Canada, then Warner in the United States would make less money off you.
okay,
And
right,
so they would be less inclined to work for you because they'd rather work their own artists because
right,
if you have a big hit, they're gonna Canada's going to be making most of the money, the Canadian part of the record company. So it would be better to have an American deal. There was exceptions to that. Like with Sony, for example, um, when Chantal got her deal with Sony, there was at a time where Michael Jackson had just sold whatever 20 million records,
sure, yeah,
and Celine Dion had sold 20 million records, and Celine Dion was from Canada, so they were, and the way they structured their company at that time, it wasn't the same way as the other record companies. So that was one of the few labels that they would assign if you signed to Canada, Sony in Canada, they would either assign you to Columbia Records or Epic Records, and you would sort of have an American deal right away.
right.
If it's still, it's not like that anymore, but
Right. I just wondered. It was something I always wondered if you don't. I don't think it's so much prevalent now because, as you mentioned, people like Celine Dion and like Brian Adams and the people that kind of successfully broke over. So I don't think it's such a thing. But I always wondered back then if it was almost detriment to be Canadian in the industry. But anyway, interesting question. I have a comment here that is just super touching. So it's from Wendy Hansen.
mhm.
You know her.
Yeah,
So
she's my neighbor.
she's your neighbor. She says, Chris Burke-Gaffney, Derek and I are blessed to live next door to Winnipeg rock royalty and always enjoy your shows. But having gotten to know you and Jules personally has been awesome. You are so humble, but your talents come second to you being the kindest, most wonderful people anyone could ever have the privilege of knowing. Oh, congrats on all you have achieved for yourselves and all who you mentor and inspire. You deserve all success in the world.
Um,
Wow.
well, you can tell by that Wendy's an angel. She really is an angel. Uh, I'm the lucky one living beside them. They've been so helpful to us and become great friends. And we're from the same era. We live right next door. We help each other out. And yeah, it's just like every day, my wife and I go, God, are we ever lucky to have the neighbors that we have? We're so lucky.
Great.
Yeah.
That's such a cool thing. Yeah, that's right on. Thanks so much, Wendy, for sharing that. That was beautiful. So, I was just thinking, Chris, so being the original founding member of a still relevant and popular band who people still want to see, and I would imagine now there's generations at the shows. I would imagine.
Um, yeah, I
After
mean,
pumps, like
yeah. I mean, a lot of the shows we do, we've been doing are like the last show we did in Winnipeg, for example, was a festival with four other bands,
nice.
and but they were all classic rock bands. But yeah, there was I guess the people that are our age, in their 60s or whatever. I don't know. You're probably still in your 40s, but
Thank
uh,
you, thank you. I'm in my 50s, but I'll take it.
people our age, they come out and they have kids or grandkids, and they bring them out and they get them turned on to the music. And I know my son, who is in a well, when he was in his 20s, he loved classic rock.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's a generational thing, and it really, yeah. You said earlier, it's great that being born when we had, and to be part of that era of music, and I agree, and yeah, it's really not just because that's the music I grew up on. It really was a incredible time historically, and I think that even in 50 years from now, people will still look back on the 60s, 70s, and 80s as
the
ground
golden years.
a groundbreaking time in terms of
Yeah,
music.
yeah, I would agree 100%. And I think I think it's really, I mean, it's got to feel neat when you go to these shows, and other artists have said it. Prism and Street Art and bands like that. Same thing with bands like yourselves and bands like that have enjoyed this incredible longevity, and people still want to come out and pay. They still want to, the songs are still relevant, and now their children are listening to them. And I don't know. I just think there's something to that. What do you think it is about songs like, A Little Success and Miracle that have just transcended years and people still, what do you think it is about those songs that people still love them and still want to hear them all these, then and now?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things, just from an awareness factor, is that um, when classic rock radio became, and it's partly because of um, there's a the baby boomers were the largest uh, segment of the population, right? And
Right.
so the music, they had a great buying power. They have a lot of purchase power, and radio stations started realizing, hey, people that are 50s, 60s, 70 years old, they don't really want to listen to whoever, the weekend, or
Right.
they want to listen to, people love what they grew up on. And so excuse me. So there was a lot of classic rock radio. Classic rock radio became a huge thing. And so a lot of people were listening to classic rock radio, not just the older ones. And so that music continued to live on. And then also because of that's such a large demographic, is that there's all these classic rock festivals, and they're well attended,
Yeah.
and people get to be nostalgia and go out and see all their old friends from a long time ago, and listen to the music from a long time ago, and have a great time, and be nostalgic. And so I think that's why um, those concerts and that music has kind of lived on.
I would agree 100%. I think it just takes you back to a simpler time. And I saw you actually with Harlequin at Rock the River 2021.
Yeah.
And there really was a sense of, God, it was like stepping back in time, and it just transported me back to a simpler time, back when life was less complicated, when you're a teen and your biggest concern is, do I get my allowance so I can buy my next album, and that sort of thing. And so you were there with Harlequin, and that's one of the other reasons I was really excited to have you on the show, Chris, because Harlequin is another favorite of mine. And I'm just curious, going from a band where you were, the founder, and I would imagine had a huge level of creative control, in the Pumps and Orphan, and how is it then to go to an already highly successful, completely formed band?
That was super fun because every band that I've been in, I've been the same, and it's great. And also the guy who has to do all the business and administration and all that kind of stuff. So this was really fun. Originally, I was I was working, I was traveling a lot. So at first I was thinking I didn't want to, I couldn't really do it. but then as I got to know the guys better, the guys in the band, I fell in love with the people.
Yeah,
George is just such a sweet guy who would do anything for anybody,
yeah.
and also I feel like, um, I looked up to him as a singer. I always thought he was a great singer, as well. And then I met Derek and the other guys in the band, and I just thought they were the greatest guys. So I agreed to do it, and I'm super glad. And it's fun. I like to concentrate on the bass and not worry about the business or having to sing too much. Um, and also, they get a lot more gigs than the Pumps and Orphan,
Right.
so I get to play a lot more, and yeah, so it's great. I love it. I'm
Will you be will you be touring with? And I love Harlequin as well, and I would agree with you. Well, George was on the show too, and he's just a fantastic guy. And so will you be touring with? Like, can we look forward to some upcoming shows from both the Pumps, Orphan, and Harlequin this summer?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, good.
yeah. We're I think I don't know what all the shows are, but they're starting to come in. So it's like with classic rock. Most of the shows are in the summertime. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, so
yeah.
yeah, we're excited to get out there again.
Right on. I look forward to that. And I was, when I was, trying to gather some information on, and for some reason that a page popped up and it was awards and accolades basically. And I swear to God, and I don't do this to embarrass you, Chris, because I know you're a very humble individual, but I printed off an entire page of, and again, I'm not going to try and embarrass you, but I'll name a few. And there was, the Canadian Aboriginal Awards, Best Recording for Eagle and Hawk, and uh, WCMA World Recording of the Year for producing Kelly Bato or Beto. Manitoba Awards, Best Producer, Manager of the Year, Best Song, 8 nominations for the 2021 MCM Awards. I mean, wow, that is success right there. And I'm just curious, out of all the awards and accolades, what are you most proud of? And I'll ask you that question, Chris, professionally. What are you most proud of and personally?
Um, what do you mean?
It doesn't have to be anything I just listed, but
Yeah, yeah.
it was
Well,
just
I mean,
a lot.
anybody who's a father is always proud of their
Yeah,
kids, so and their granddaughter. So I'm really proud of that. And yeah, as far as the music goes, like I said before, a lot of people know me for the band stuff, but when you're when you're behind the scenes, and I did a lot of behind the scenes there from the late '90s into 2010 or 2015, where I was working for other people, and I got to work with like the heads of record companies in New York and Los Angeles and Nashville, and some of the people I met, and I was always more. Uh, I never got gaga about meeting rock stars, but I always got like nervous and gaga about meeting
producers. Yeah,
record executives for some reason, like all these famous guys and I ended up meeting a lot of these people and got inside the room in a lot of crazy situations, hanging out, going to drink with famous A&R people who had signed Aerosmith and Bonnie Raitt and listen to their stories and stuff like that. Um, and um, so that's not something that people know about or people get to see, or it's not something you talk about, because usually when I'm doing interviews or stuff like this, or have an award for something, it's usually for something that I did and not for something that just being a part of.
right.
But those are some things that I look back on and go, oh my God, I got drunk with Eric Idle from Monty Python, like
That's crazy.
uh, things like that. Yeah, so it's been a wild ride.
I can imagine. Not everybody can say they got drunk with Eric Idle.
Yeah, well, there's lots of stories like that of other famous people and that I've met and hung out with, and but you
Is there
know,
a book? Is there a book in you?
uh, a
Should
couple of
be.
people have said that, and I was thinking that. I was thinking that maybe I should start with maybe just a post and call it name dropping, and I could just name drop all the people I've met and hung out with.
I
Um,
love it. Name dropping with Chris.
yeah,
Yeah, why not?
yeah,
I noticed as I was looking at some of these awards, some of them are in the Aboriginal genre.
yeah.
Do you have a special connection to that, or because
Well,
there's
I
a
guess
few
about
there?
25 years ago, I met a guy named Vince Fontaine, who was the leader of Eagle and Hawks. He's kind of like a pioneer in Indigenous music. And we became super good friends. He was like, I don't know, one of my best friends, if not my best friend. And so I produced the Eagle and Hawk records, and they won a Juno. And so a lot of other Indigenous artists uh, started working with me. And the more I got to know that culture and that world, the more I really liked it because I
Right.
really found that it's a different, you know, I'm really into nature, and their whole culture is built on
Yeah.
nature. And so I could totally relate to that. And I just found that they were often more humble and um, anyway, so I ended up working with a lot more indigenous people and had some success with some of them. And so I'm kind of like the go-to guy now in Winnipeg.
Right. That's amazing. Yeah, and I noticed there's a Juno nomination as well for Indian City.
Yeah, the
And
record
then, yeah.
the guy I was telling you about, Vince Fontaine, died last year in February while we were playing hockey together. And so we had just finished his last record called Code Red, and I thought, oh, this record's got it. And we had Jim Cuddy was a guest on it from Blue Rodeo, and
Nice.
Don Amaro, who's a country singer, a really good country singer. He was a guest on it. I did a guest song. Chantal Kreviazuk did a guest song. So it was a really I thought it was a great record, and it needed to. It shouldn't just die, with him. So I called up the band and I called up his family. I said, "Hey, I can take over this project if you guys want, because I'd like to see Vince's legacy, get the love and life that it deserves." And so I helped the band put it out, got them the record deal, and now they're nominated for a Juno. So yeah, it's good. Proud,
That's
very very proud of that too.
right. That's got to feel amazing, to start and watch them grow and then reap the rewards of, not that it's about awards, but just to have that acknowledgement and recognition for your work. That's got to be an amazing feeling, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's good. Although I don't get much of the acknowledgement. The band gets most of the acknowledgement.
I That's the way it goes. Eh?
For that, nobody's gonna. I wrote most of the songs on the record and produced the record, and also ended up managing the record. But when they if they win the Juno, it won't be handed to me.
Right, right. I think it's really interesting and lucky for you that you kind of get to see the best sides of both worlds. You get to perform and you get to also,
Yeah,
I would imagine it just makes you a more well-rounded artist, just in general, just getting
yeah,
getting ready to
yeah.
see
I feel like I feel like I can really help artists because
yeah,
I am one. And I'm not, on the business side. I am an artist, but at the same time, I have been in that world and lived in that world. So I feel like that's one of the contributions that I have that can help artists. That's a little more unique.
right, right. I love it. And speaking of artists, who's in the house? Tad C. Goddard from Prism is in the house.
Oh, God, I love that guy.
Don't we love it? Yeah, the band was on the Prism was on the show last week. Tad was awesome. I love
Yeah,
them. They're
I saw some of the show. Yeah. Oh,
such great guys.
yeah, he's a sweet guy. I love him.
So
I,
he's saying, "Hey Chris and Kelly, you guys rock. Always a pleasure gigging with you, man." Chris did a tour 4 years. Oh, sorry, Chris did a tour years ago, opening for Prism.
Yeah, one of the first when the very first Pumps record came out, one of the first tours we had was with Prism, and as you probably know, Prism were huge back in the early '80s. They play Maple Leaf Gardens and the Montreal Forum. They were freaking huge, so it was a big tour, and we went all the way through the Eastern Canada into the Maritimes, and that's where Polygram didn't have any records in stores when we were on tour with Prism.
Right. And I wasn't going to bring it up because we talked about it a little bit before the show. But yeah, people were, you guys were packing the bars and people were falling in love with your music and everybody wanted to buy your albums and there was none in the store, which I would imagine was a little bit frustrating.
It was frustrating, yeah.
Yeah. But, so Riney Horn is saying, what a great gig. I think he's referring to the Harlequin one because it came in a little earlier. Mitch Desmareau was saying, great crew, great interview. And Adele is saying, Adele Wilding, who is also a musician, is saying, I met Chris after a Harlequin show in Winnipeg late last year. Just an excellent person. I love his candor about the industry.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would agree.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Hello,
guys.
Adele. Good to, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, love her.
I remember chatting with her and she does some teaching and stuff
she
too.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah, you betcha. So here's a question for you, Chris. What makes you the happiest? What makes you happy these days?
Playing hockey.
Is that right?
Yeah. I'm a hockey fanatic. I played 4 times last week, and I just that's one time where I step on the ice and forget about everything. It's therapy for me, and it's also I want to, now that I'm in the last third of my life, I really want to. I'm really afraid to be sedentary when I'm older. Like, I don't want to be 85 sitting in a chair. I want to be able
Right.
to move around. So not only do I love hockey and love playing, but I feel like it is going to keep me young too.
100%. I would agree. Good for you. I think that's. And so, do you play in a league or anything, or do you just kind of get together with friends and shoot the puck?
There's it's kind of a league. I play in 2 different. It's not a league really. It's just got a musicians thing that
Nice.
there's a bunch of guys that come out, and one team has black sweaters and one team has whites, and just people that love, guys that love hockey.
Right. Good stuff. Good stuff, Chris. So yeah, what's coming up for you? Like, what? I think there should be a book, but that's just me personally. But what's next for you? More of the same, or have you got new projects on the go?
Oh yeah, I've actually got 3 records that I'm working on right now. When I say records, it's not
Only
always
3?
it's not really always albums. A lot of people are just recording one song at a time. People don't necessarily put records out. They'll record a song and then they'll put one out every 3 months or something. I'm just finishing up a song with a country artist named Alex Eastman. Tonight, I was right before this interview, I was working with another country artist named Daniel DeSorsi. Who's a killer singer. And then I have Rhonda Head, who's amazing Indigenous artist, but she also does like pop stuff, and she is involved with the Grammys. She's got a lot of stuff going on.
That's great. Yeah. Good stuff. Well, you'll never be bored by the sounds of it.
No, I never want to be bored.
No, boredom is death. Boredom is equal to death for me too. Yeah.
My wife and I went to Mexico. We were there a few weeks ago, and we stayed too long. I started to get bored.
Yeah. Even Mexico, after a while, it's a lot of downtime.
Yeah, I couldn't work and I couldn't play hockey, so it was like I was starting.
Look at the time. Right on. Tad wants to know when the Jets are going to hire you for an assistant coach.
I've been hustling him and going on social media telling the coach what to do, and I do know Mark Chimberin, the owner, but they haven't put the call out yet. But the guy they got now is doing a pretty good job.
Well, there you go, Tad. We're gonna stick to the producing for now, eh?
Yeah.
Right on. Chris, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your evening to spend it with us. And I can't wait to catch you this summer. I know that I'll run into you at one of your, because I will be there if you're anywhere in the Southern Alberta area.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So continued success with your producing and your hockey playing, and health and happiness. And here's to a little more success, Chris. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Same to me, and thanks to everybody for joining us.
Right on. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. Once again, huge shout out to Robert Young and Writers and Rockers Coffee Company. Join us next week, where my guest will be Rick Emmett from Triumph. Until then, stay safe and sane, take care of each other, and be really nice to one another. Bye-bye.